Hello, I'm Robert Morin, Chief Judge of the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. On behalf of all of the judges and the staff, we welcome you to Superior Court. We know that many of you have busy lives and that being here involves some inconvenience or sacrifice. And we will do everything we can to ensure that your time is used efficiently, and if you are not needed, we'll release you as soon as we know. Jury trials are one of the few constitutional rights that every citizen has the opportunity to participate in. It's one of the few obligations that all eligible citizens are required to perform, regardless of who you are or your occupation. As citizens, we all must offer to serve. Even judges have to serve on jury duty. Today, we've randomly summoned persons from all across the city to serve as jurors. You're here because parties involved in a civil or criminal trial have requested a jury trial. Based on the number of trial requests we have, we've estimated how many jurors are needed. Right now, judges are calling cases to determine if the parties are ready to begin the trial and making rulings on preliminary matters. If at the end of the day you're not seated on a jury, don't take it personally. Sometimes parties resolve cases when they know that jurors are waiting to be called to the courtroom to start the trial. And that way, even if you're not sent to a courtroom, your presence will have been very important in resolving cases that are set for trial. For those of you who are selected and serve on a jury, you will see firsthand our system of justice in action. You'll be the triers of fact, listening and evaluating the evidence that is presented to you in the courtroom. Whether it's a civil case or a criminal one, all the parties in the courtroom depend on you to make a fair and just decision, based solely on the evidence presented and according to the instructions of law given by the trial judge. As jurors, you must make your decision without bias or prejudice, sympathy or favoritism to either side. And when you render your verdict, you'll be making an important decision that affects the lives of the people involved in the case. So we appreciate that you're going to take this obligation seriously. Trial by jury is one of the most fundamental ways we uphold the principles of our Constitution. We can only uphold those constitutional rights by your participation. That is why we thank you for being here and for your service to your community. On behalf of the Superior Court and its staff, thank you for being here.
Southwest, tell truth, whole truth, nothing but truth, that's God.
I do. Welcome to jury duty in D.C. Superior Court, and thank you for your service. As a D.C. resident, born and bred, I've sat in those same seats as a juror. As a trial lawyer, I practice in the courtrooms down the hall. And as a law professor who studies juries for a living, I can tell you, your presence here is critical to the courts and our constitutional system. With me today are potential jurors who, like millions of Americans, have received the call to jury duty. And we are here in one of D.C. Superior Court's courtrooms, just like the ones you're going to be in. I've been asked to speak to prospective jurors because I believe in juries and jurors. I believe juries and jurors are foundational to the American legal system. I didn't start out that way. As a lawyer, I had my doubts. But then I saw what juries do. I saw the effort and engagement day after day. I saw how they came together as a group and worked hard for a problem to solve a hard problem. I was inspired because they were inspiring. One of the nice things about D.C. Superior Court is that lawyers can speak with jurors after the case is over, after the verdict's done. And I took advantage of that opportunity. I wanted to see not only why they came out to a certain verdict, but how they experienced the process. And that's when I discovered something pretty inspiring. Jurors enjoyed the process. They found it personally meaningful. They enjoyed coming together with a group of people they might not otherwise meet and solve a hard problem and do it well. They spoke of jury service with almost a patriotic pride, and they realized that this is an incredible process. A few moments ago, I asked these jurors to write down what they thought about jury duty. And don't worry, I didn't have them write down their names so they can be completely honest. But let's see what they said. All right, let's begin with one of the comments.
It's so inconvenient. I have to put my whole life on hold to be here.
You're right. Jury service can be a sacrifice in both time and effort, and maybe even money. But in return, you get a unique opportunity to serve the community, to serve the greater good. You are all here because you are the community. You represent the community. This is your place of community justice. Jury service, like a democracy, is a collective effort.
I'm dreading this. I don't know what to do.
Who am I to sit in judgment of someone else? It's too much responsibility. I don't have all the answers.
I'm not a judge, just an average person. How can I tell who's guilty and who isn't?
You know, that's one of the geniuses of our jury system. It delegates legal power to ordinary citizens like you and me. We have to do the hard work of self-governance. That's one of the cornerstones of our democracy. We the people, that's us. In other systems, other countries, the tyrants rule, the rulers rule, but not here. Here, the citizens, through the jury, make the hard decisions. And it's been that way since the very beginning of America. The right to a jury trial came over on those first boats to America, established in the Jamestown colony over 400 years ago. Juries were in each of the 13 colonies, and in fact, the jury was a factor in the events that led to the Revolutionary War. The Declaration of Independence charged that King George III deprived the colonists, quote, in many cases of the benefits of the trial by jury. Little wonder that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights demanded that criminal cases be heard by a jury. This was an intentional statement about the newborn American identity. The right to sit on a jury is woven throughout America's history, at events such as the Civil Rights Movement and the women's suffrage movement. Before and after the 19th Amendment, guaranteeing women political equality, advocates fought for access to jury duty, again, recognizing that the right to serve on a jury symbolized true equality. Before desegregating schools, civil rights advocates targeted jury service, recognizing that full racial equality meant guaranteeing everyone the right to serve as a juror. And to this day, jury service is a common enterprise, a shared constitutional experience between citizens. It hasn't been an easy, fast, or clean process. People have protested, fought, and sacrificed so that you can sit in those seats as equals, as citizens, and as Americans. You've been summoned here today as a potential juror. But if you're selected to serve on a jury, your service begins immediately. Most trials last in D.C. Superior Court between 3 to 5 days, so you should plan accordingly. If you're not selected to serve on a jury today, your service is over, as long as the jury's office doesn't tell you otherwise. If you have a problem with serving, if you have a conflict, please see the juror's office immediately and let them know if you have any scheduling concerns or hardships.
What's a good excuse for not serving? No, really, I'm not kidding.
But of course, you have to tell the truth. No sick grandmother stories unless your grandmother really is sick and you're the only one who can take care of her. But if you do have a conflict or concern, go see someone at the juror's office immediately. All right. Any other questions?
I saw so many people waiting to get in here. Why do you need so many people if there are only 12 on the jury?
During the jury selection process, all potential jurors go through a process called voir dire, which is when the attorneys and the judge try to find the fairest and most unbiased jurors for this particular case. To help in that process, the first thing you'll do is to swear an oath or otherwise affirm that the answers you give will be the truth and will be complete.
Why are we being questioned? We are not on trial.
But you are going to be determining the outcome of the case. And it's very important for the court to be able to find the most fair and impartial jurors for each particular case. And if you have any concerns about your answers and saying them in public, you can always ask to speak separately with the judge and the attorneys. So what kind of questions might you be asked as a potential juror?
Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to ask is the most important question of the day. It's a simple question, can be answered yes or no. Listen carefully. Have any of y'all been contacted about this case?
Well, the first thing that will happen when you go to the courtroom is you'll see the parties and the attorneys, and they will read to you a list of potential witnesses, people you might see in trial. And so one question you most certainly would be asked is, do you know any of these people? Do you? Do you? Well, if you did, you probably wouldn't be selected for a juror on this case because you wouldn't be able to be impartial. But don't leave the court building. You should return back to the juror's office, give them your juror number, and they will put you in the larger jury pool for perhaps selection in yet another jury. And that process continues throughout the day. During voir dire, one of the things you'll learn is a little something about the case. So let's say, for example, the case involves injuries from a dog bite. One question might be, how do you feel about dogs? Do you own any dogs? Do you? No. So you don't own any dogs. You might be a good juror for this particular case. Now, that was a silly example, but this is serious. In courtrooms across this country, American stories unfold at trial, and jurors must involve themselves in some of the most personal, sensational, and significant issues in a community. These are real cases with real people and real consequences. And jurors are there front and center to keep things fair, to hold people accountable, to hold the system accountable, and to represent the community.
But what about a criminal case, like murder or rape or fraud or theft? I mean, I think we pretty much all agree that those are bad things. But isn't it like we've already made a decision before the trial starts?
Not quite. The issue in a case like that is whether the nature of the charge itself is such that would keep you from being reasoned and rational about the evidence. The question is not whether murder or rape or theft is bad, but whether the government has proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt that the accused did the crime based on the evidence presented and the standards of law. Make sense? Yeah. Finally, in voir dire, you should tell the judge if you have any religious or moral beliefs that would keep you from serving. And sometimes, voir dire takes more than one day. Put yourself in the position of someone who might end up before the court and the judge. If you or a loved one were in a dispute, or were the victim of a crime, or were accused of a crime, who would you want on that jury?
Someone who'd care about doing a good job.
Exactly. Someone who was willing to work hard, someone who would listen, someone who would pay attention, and someone who wanted to make the right call. Look, we're all one mistake away from being in court. A traffic accident, a contract or neighborly dispute, or a crime. We need good jurors because we all need good juries. Now, not everyone who goes through the voir dire process may be chosen to sit on that jury. Generally, each side in a case has a right to ask, without giving a reason, that a certain limited number of jurors be excused. This is called a peremptory challenge. Each side can also make an unlimited number of challenges for good reasons, called challenges for cause, good cause. Using the example of our biting dog controversy, the reason could be as simple as the fact that you're an unabashed dog lover or that you can't stand dogs. When attorneys make these challenges, they're not trying to embarrass you. They're simply trying to find the most impartial jury possible.
So what happens next?
Well, if you're selected for the trial, it can begin immediately. And if you're not selected for that jury, you'll go back to the juror's office and let them know that you have not been selected. Now it's my turn to be brutally honest with all of you. There is a lot of waiting time in jury service. A lot of waiting time. But there's a reason why you have to wait. Because the process of voir dire is important. The lawyers, the judge, the system wants to get it right the first time through. So we take our time, we do it carefully, and we do it right. Now many jurors, as you sit there, use that downtime for all sorts of things. You can use the court's free Wi-Fi, you can read a good book, do the crossword, and this is Washington, you could do some work.
So let's say we do get selected for the jury. I know I haven't had any training. I don't know anything about the law, except what I see on TV.
Well, I would advise you not to use what you learned on TV as part of jury service. The beauty of the jury system is we want jurors to come in fresh. We want you to come in and look at the case anew. The qualities of being a good juror are really rather simple. You need to focus, you need to listen to the evidence, and most judges will allow jurors to take notes.
And if we don't know what's going on, we can look it up or ask a friend, right?
Well, no. There are very definite rules about the use of technology as a juror, and the judge will instruct you on what those rules are. When it comes to your specific case, or the people involved, remember, you must only consider the evidence presented in the courtroom. So you can't look up anything on the internet concerning this case or any of the people involved, including the parties, the defendant, the witnesses, the lawyers, and the judge. You may not consult any dictionaries for the meaning of words, or any encyclopedias for general information on the subjects of the trial. Even making a phone call to someone else and talking about the case is forbidden.
I think it's going to make our job harder.
Well, no, actually, it makes more sense to me, because everybody on the jury has seen and heard the same evidence. So when we go to talk about the case, we'll be starting on an even playing field. Nobody knows any more than anybody else.
Now you're getting it. The rules are designed to ensure fairness for all the parties. If any juror fails to follow the rules, it could jeopardize the case. It could be catastrophic for the parties and for the juror involved. You could be in big trouble.
But we are allowed to talk to each other about the case, right?
You are allowed to talk about the case, but only when you're all together as a jury in deliberations.
So we gotta talk about it?
Now, wait a minute. The judge said absolutely not to discuss this case.
Yeah, but that judge ain't stuck here away from his wife and kids. Now, the sooner we start talking about it, the sooner we can get it over with and get home.
And trust me, you'll have plenty of time to discuss the case when you're all together in deliberations.
How does that work exactly? I mean, suppose we all can't agree on a decision. Don't we all have to agree?
Well, the short answer is yes. You all have to vote to a verdict, and that verdict must be unanimous. How you get to that unanimous verdict is part of the process called deliberations.
Continue.
And before you deliberate, the judge will give you jury instructions, formal jury instructions that provide the controlling law, the burdens of proof, and what you need to be able to make your decision.
Okay, are we ready? Now, all those voting guilty, please raise your hands.
Once you're in the deliberation room, your goal will be to reach a decision. Each juror votes based on the facts that were presented during the trial. You must debate issues as they were described by the parties in the case. During deliberation, each of you expresses your opinions based on the evidence as you perceived it. You also must listen to your fellow jurors respectfully and thoughtfully, even if their views aren't the same as yours.
I don't know. Then what do you want? I just want to talk.
Well, what's there to talk about?
In this Academy Award-nominated movie, a single juror convinces the other 11 to question their assumptions of guilt in what appears to be a simple case. The lone juror argues against a quick vote for guilt, and eventually creates enough questions to turn around the verdict.
I honestly think the guy's guilty. Couldn't change my mind if you talked for 100 years.
I'm not trying to change your mind. It's just that we're talking about somebody's life here. We can't decide it in 5 minutes, supposing we're wrong.
Supposing we're wrong. Supposing this whole building should fall down on my head. You can suppose anything.
That's right.
Well, this time Hollywood got it right. That fictional story represents a very American ideal, the power of the dissenting voice. That character held an opposing view that he thought was fair and reasoned and just. He engaged with the jurors. They debated, they deliberated, they disagreed, but eventually came to a unanimous verdict. And that's the way it's supposed to work. Who knows? Maybe the dissenting view will be yours or yours or yours. I'm not saying that you have to take a position in opposition to the group. The key to jury deliberations is to approach it with an open mind. It's an open discussion. The final verdict won't be the opinion of one juror or one group. It'll be a collective decision with the voices of all the jurors, and you'll do it through reasoned discussion and debate.
This is starting to sound real interesting. Now, I don't want to miss being a juror, but what if I'm not chosen?
Well, it depends on the case and what the lawyer says.
Right.
You're right. I've had jurors actually thank me for the opportunity to serve on a jury.
We are notified by mail to come down to this place to decide on the guilt or innocence of a man we have never heard of before. We have nothing to gain or lose by our verdict. This is one of the reasons why we are strong.
Throughout the day, as you're in the jury lounge waiting, the court staff will inform you about the need for jury panels. And after the last request for jury panels is finished, you'll be excused for the day. You're probably all curious about the nuts and bolts, the travel and jury fees, lunch places, the vending machines, Wi-Fi access, and the other amenities. Well, please refer to the information you received when you checked in at the jury's office. And if you have any other questions or concerns, please ask the helpful staff of the juror's office. The jury experience is like no other moment in our lives. We're called to act as citizens, as equals, to do a job no one else can do. And I know that once you've served, you'll never be the same, because for the moments you spent in this courthouse, you had the duty, the responsibility, and the authority to make a decision that affects lives. It's powerful, it's meaningful, and it's our system of justice. Oh, and one last thing. Enjoy the experience, and thank you for your service.